Hi everyone, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Fractal Ridge. It's coming in at around the £130 mark and it's a rather modern, striking looking ITX case. But amazingly, even though it is an ITX case and it is so very thin, there's an awful lot of hardware that you can put inside. So I thought it would be good for us to get down and dirty, so pause the video if you need to, get your cookies, get your tea, get your coffee, get your soft drinks. It's time for a TTL case review. Okay then, so in the normal format that we do with these videos, we normally go at the front and the top, but the front and the top is just ventilation. And we're going to be doing a lot of moving around with this case, so I will do my best to try and show you what I need to. But at the bottom down here you have a combined headphone and microphone, you have your power switch, there is actually a hidden power light inside here, but you've got two USB 3s and then you get a USB-C on the front. Now this front panel is actually magnetic, pulls off and you can see there is some very minor dust filtering, which is pretty much the cloth that you can see on the front. Now that is the only dust filtering for the entire case. Now this case is incredibly compact and I've put as much in it as I can do, but I will explain more in a moment. Now you can see I have this stand on the bottom at the moment. Now you can actually change the orientation of the case. So as you can see at the moment we have the USB at the bottom, but you can turn it the other way around and have the USBs at the top, and that is simply done by removing the top and the bottom panels, which is just a few screws, and you can swap them around. You can also lay the case over on its side if you wish. Now if you did that, you're going to have to go careful with what side you do it, because you're going to need to make sure that you have ample ventilation and airflow there, and you'll see what's going on inside in a moment. Now when we spin round to the back, it gives you the first glimpse of kind of what's going on. Now you can see you have a graphics card, expansion slots at the top. Now there is a total of 3 expansion slots there, and then you can see down at the bottom you can see the motherboard, which is ITX. You can also see that the power cable is hanging out at the moment, but it would normally be fitted and screwed in there, and I'm going to explain why I've done it in a minute, because it does actually make some sense. Now you don't have to do what I've done, but it's just going to be a little bit of a hint or a tip. Now if we remove the back panel, and this one I'm going to call the back panel because it is the back of the motherboard. Now the solid state drives that I have in it are just placeholders, but one of the reasons why I wanted to show you is they're actually like quick release. You don't need to use any screws or anything, you can just push them into place and that's it, they're held there. Now you can see it comes fitted with 240mm fans at the top. The motherboard, back of the motherboard tray is here. I like that this is so very open for an ITX, because quite often with an ITX motherboard up on this edge you might find that you have solid state drive mounts. Loads of motherboards do it now, and they've made this aperture, this opening huge, that you've got loads of access, so not just for CPU back plates, but actually be able to get in there for solid state drives as well. So that's around the back. Other than there are 2 screws at the bottom on both sides for the bottom panel, and 2 screws at the top on both sides, and you can literally just pull those open and pull the entire top off if you wanted. Now coming round to the front side, quite weirdly it is the front of the case, and you'll see there's no CPU cooler in here. Now quite embarrassingly I found that I didn't have a cooler short enough to fit in here. Has a total maximum height of 70mm and I just didn't have one to hand. We'll start with the power cable, and you can see the power cable here is quite looped around. We could fit it down the bottom if we wanted, but it just become a bit of a pain for me, and I didn't understand why it was so long. So I've had a look for power supplies, and the way that they clip in at the bottom, and all of them are the way that I have with this little baby Lanley here. Now the Lanley is the SP850. It's all white, comes with all white cables, and it even has the 12 volt HP PWR, you know the one I mean. Anyway, the 12 plus 4 pin or the 16 pin that the Nvidia's using. It's only 850 watts, so you're going to be kind of on the limits with a 4080, but we will see. Anyway, it's all white. I really liked it. Got it in here. Very small form factor, but like I said, in here the cable is 90 degrees and it pulls out the side. So my answer for not having too much cable bunched up inside was to undo the 2 screws on the back and then just pull the cable out. So you can still remove your power cable, but it just means that you've not got loads of unnecessary cable on the inside. I do believe that this is a fair bit too long. I think it's a good 10 centimetres, maybe 15 centimetres too long. And I get that they wanted to have the opportunity to be able to do it, but with that 90 degree connection, it just made this system that I was trying to do tidily, it just made it too messy, especially down here where it's one of the airflows for the bottom of the case. And you obviously want natural kind of convection, and it just seemed to be a bit confusing. Now, with the top, you can just remove the screws, as I've already said, to gain access to pull the roof off. Now, graphics card wise, they say 325 millimeters is the maximum length that you can get into the case. They do say about widths and that sort of thing as well. And if I'm completely honest, I think the best way that I can put it is this graphics card is 315 millimeters long, and it was a bit tight to get in, but I did manage to get in a 4090. 3 slots in the back, and that was including the the fans in the side. Technically, they say it shouldn't fit, but it does. So just so you know, also what you do have to do is undo the screws at the top over here, and then you need to take the screws off the top of the fans, and then this whole section comes off and the graphics card goes in the top. It's the most annoying dismantling part that you have to do about the build with this case. So you can get a 4090 in, you can get a 4090 in with the fans as well. One thing I would say though is that with these fans, I'm unsure about how much they're actually going to do for my graphics card that's in there. Like, I don't know whether they're going to hamper things or not. So if you do buy one of these, please try and test with and without the fans, because you might find that your graphics card might just breathe a little better without the fans there at all, because there's not a great deal of room between the sides. There's plenty of airflow in the sides. It's a bit of a strange one. The only thing I would say is there's no dust filtering in the side here. There's no dust filtering over here either, which I found a little bit strange considering things are so tight. You know, the fact that they didn't bother with dust filters at all. Now, you have a riser card just here on coming up from the motherboard itself. They do give you a shorter one, which goes in the top up here. But what I did find is with the Strix that I have fitted, it's actually the Z690 Strix, not the 790, but there are 3 screws for screwing the riser card in, and I could only get 2 of them in because the heatsink on the Strix was in the way. There's no other way that you could get there to get it in unless you start taking all the heat sinks off of the Strix and then put it in. So just be prepared to spend a little bit of time to try and get things in there. Now with the graphics card, as you can see, any dual slot graphics card, you're going to have a dual slot graphics card and then the fans. Although they do say that you can fit up to a 280mm radiator in the roof. Now, if you did go radiators, I think with some impeccable planning, you could get a set of fans, a radiator, and then a water-cooled graphics card in this space. Where you're going to end up putting reservoirs and the like, I have zero idea. But radiator, fans, or fans, radiator, graphics card is possible. I think in reality though, the idea with having a radiator in the roof would be a water-cooled CPU rather than a water-cooled GPU. And I think because of the limitations down at the bottom of the case down here, with there only being 70mm, if I zoom out so you can actually see what I'm on about, with there only being 70mm of clearance, a water block would be a good idea. I also think that an AIO for the CPU could be a good idea. Obviously you get onboard graphics with a lot of CPUs now. Intel and AMD both support versions of it, and it's really going to depend what you want to get from the system itself. But if gaming is your thing, then I think having an AIO is going to be too much of a limitation when it comes to quite clearly needing graphics card. I would also say that a very shallow CPU cooler is probably going to be a stretch too far for any of the currently launched 7000 series AMD CPUs, unless you enable eco mode, or you've got one of the motherboards like Asus and MSI where you can set a maximum temperature threshold for it to keep your performance within. Asus have got a one-step mode now where you can go into Precision Boost Overdrive and you can literally select positive performance, and then you have a 90, 80 and 70 degrees option. I'm not sure whether you'll get positive with a CPU cooler this small and the 70 degrees option, but I don't think it would be a bad place to definitely start. Intel is a little bit more complex because they don't have any of the power targets like temperature targets or anything like that, and I think you might get hampered with throttling. But with Intel, if you did want to go down this road for this system, undervolting is key. Whether you use an offset or just a manually set voltage that is much below what they would have come with at standard, you'll still be able to get stability, and I actually think you get away with getting some reasonable performance with this. You might need to do some funky offsets with the turbo boost, or turning the turbo boost down or off so that it's not trying to go to 5.3, 5.5 gigahertz, but I think you probably could make it work if you're hands-on, and you really do need to be hands-on when it comes to building in such a small form factor. Fractal have made it very customizable though, which is a really good thing. You've managed to get lots of hardware in, 140mm fans. I would probably be running 120s up here if I'm honest though. I actually think a bit of colour coming out the side of the case might be nice as well. But you've got water cooling options, you've got multiple storage options, and airflow does look good, but it is just very short on space. But so often nowadays ITX cases are massive and lose sight of the fact that some people just want a small footprint. Now you can tell I've not done any ITX stuff for quite a long time, with the fact that the only ITX cooler that I have, or shallow cooler that I have, is a downdraft cooler that I'm using on my old server that's been decommissioned, and I've just not had time to strip it all down and try to find a bracket that would fit this. So the case itself, I was actually pleasantly surprised. The fact that you could get a 4090 in the top is immense. We think, and I have to say that because of NDAs, we think that the 4080 is going to be the same size as the 4090. So 4080 Founders Edition might, probably will fit. But obviously just keep an eye on the maximum lengths that you can find for your graphics card. This is 315. I would say, you're going to struggle to get a 325 in. It probably will fit, but it is actually kind of nice to have a little bit of spare room down the end to route your 8-pin power cables. If you go right to 325, then you're going to be trying to tuck them down the back of the graphics card or against the fans, and I think you might run into some issues there. The Lan Li power supply fits nice, definitely suits this white well. The cables aren't too long, comes nicely white. This itself, I think, is kind of disappointing to hide behind that meshed window. It kind of deserves a bit of glass there. But obviously with it needing to breathe and stuff, but as far as like getting photos of your build, this will be perfect. I've had it here for a few weeks, and when this case turned up, I was like, oh, amazing. That's a match made in heaven, which is exactly why I pulled it out and exactly why I thought I'd say that it would be a good fit. So plenty of room for graphics cards, plenty of room for fans. I would definitely trial with and without fans. I'd actually completely remove the fans to test as well, because I think that you might find that these fans, although you think they're going to help, I'm not entirely sure that they would do. Slow spinning 140s and then very fast spinning graphics card fans, it might hinder flow. Just remember, 70mm maximum for the total air-cooled CPU cooler height. And if the power cable does annoy you like it did me, just pop the 2 screws out and dangle it around the back of the case. You're probably not going to see this anyway. You can hide it off the back of the case itself, and it just seems to solve a messy internal problem. Beyond that, I actually really like it. It's making me want to build systems in it, which is why I said to you about trying with and without fans, because my head was genuinely there thinking about it. I have asked a couple of people to try and get a decent CPU cooler for this so that I can start trialing, because I can see this ending up as an ITX build that I may keep going back to. So you never know where you might see this pop up again in the not too distant future. Again, thanks for Lan Li for sending this. I knew I'd find a use for it eventually. I'll be honest, I asked for it because it was white, and I knew I'd have a white case that needed an SFX system within too long. So I grabbed it while I could, and even, like I said, comes with a 12V8 PWR cable. Now I've read it, I can actually say it out loud. So you could even power let's say an unreleased 4000 series graphics card, because we know we've got one coming and we know we've got another one coming out in January. The one in January, it would definitely be okay with this, and the one that's not a 4090 but just below it, I reckon you'd probably get away with being able to use this as well. Deep breaths. Lovely white case from Fractal, ticks a lot of boxes. I love the fact you can tip it over and have it horizontal, or whatever way you actually wanted to have it upright. It's got a really nice kind of Scandinavian, almost like, I don't mean IKEA in a cheap way, but the colouring and the fabric, it kind of does make me think of like IKEA furniture and stuff. But like I said, not in a cheap way, but just in a styling kind of Scandinavian way. But then again, Fractal, Scandinavian, perfect. So, I really like it. I hope you do too. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments underneath. Please click through. Follow me on socials if you would like to. I'm always up to something stupid. So, thank you very much for watching. This has been Tiny Tom Logan with another video for you. Out. Ding! Love you, sis.